98 Not Out, sponsored by Shepherd Neame, proud supporters of cricket in Essex.
It's a really, really big 98 Not Out welcome to another great guest that we've got for you this week. It is speaking to us from live from Pakistan. It's Mr. Jonty Rhodes. Jonty, how's Pakistan doing?
Darren, how are you doing? Hello, Paul. Pakistan's doing really well. I'm actually here doing a little bit of commentary work and with a few of the UK boys. Mark Butcher.
With you?
Got Mark Butcher and Dominic Cork. So we're the overseas crew. And then Waka Yunus, Bazid Khan, and two of the ladies as well. So Rouge and Sana Mir. So we've got quite a collection of expertise. Apparently, we're experts.
That's good.
We had the great Ramiz Raja. He's hosting the show. Yeah.
How is it out there with the PSL at the moment? Because obviously we've had this big break because of COVID. Were you there when it first kicked off in February?
Yeah, I was actually at the start of the PSL because the years prior to this, they had played most of the tournament in Dubai and then come across for the actual playoffs. This year in 2020, it was the entire tournament started in Pakistan. But then I had to shoot across to India to play in an old man's tournament. There was a road safety awareness tournament.
Oh, right.
And South Africa, West Indies, Australia, India, of course, Sri Lanka. And we got one game, and then we also got shut down and sent home. So probably saved the hamstrings just playing the one game.
It's a shame because the atmosphere looked fantastic in February with the crowds there and the whole of the tournament being played in Pakistan for the first time. Has it dented that, being back there with no crowds and fanatical supporters present?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a massive difference. And I had 10 weeks in Dubai with the IPL with a very similar scenario. You know, I think from a playing perspective, it doesn't matter if they're 20,000 people or if it's empty. You still bring your A game to the event. But you know, when the sort of game is tight and you're the home team and you got the crowd behind you, I think it does make a slight difference to be able to utilize that and kind of juice your own game up. So yeah, very, very evident empty stadium. But you know, we had a double header on the first day, the second eliminator on the second day, and a day off, and it's a final tomorrow. So you know, it's so condensed and pretty congested that you don't really have time to sort of soak up that lack of atmosphere. There's a lot riding on every single game, every single over. So from that perspective, you know, the cricket's been really good. You know, as in Pakistan, they produce young fast bowlers, and sure enough, there's been a few of them knocking stumps over again, and it's been great to see.
Calendar, we were talking about this on the show last week. The cricket calendar globally is really congested now with people trying to catch up and fit everything in.
Sure.
You've just come from the IPL with Kings 11 Punjab and teaching Chris Gale how to field.
No, that was Nicholas Pooran. That was Nicholas Pooran. That wasn't Chris Gale.
Good job.
Look the same height.
Well, he did a good
Chris Gale.
But yeah, so I mean, you've gone straight from there to here, and then there's some players are going to go to New Zealand. Were you telling me about one of the quarantine? The reality of living.
Yeah.
Was there a situation there you were telling me about?
Well, the interesting thing, the Australian players in our team and the Indian players that were going to go to Australia, they pretty much, the day that we lost our final game, it was against Chennai. So that was the 1st of November. So the last of our round robin matches. The players had been told in the morning, so if we lose, we were out of the tournament, we wouldn't make the playoffs. They were told to pack their bags in case we lost. Because then they had to leave straight from the game. So it was Maxwell, KL Rahul, Mayank Agarwal, Mohammad Shami. Those guys then got on a separate bus and went to a separate hotel straight after the match. Because they went into a quarantine, a separate bubble, and waited for the rest of the IPL to finish. Because they would then fly over with all the Australians and with all the Indian players. So our poor blokes didn't, because we got knocked out on the 1st of November, they had to wait until the 10th before they could get on a plane and then start a 2-week quarantine in Australia. So it's been pretty tough for some of the boys sitting around a hotel.
Yeah, they've effectively been in quarantine for a month then, start to finish, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
2 months there, 2 months when they get home.
Yeah. You know, so
Wow.
the Australian, New Zealand, I mean, New Zealand has got an even more interesting scenario where Mitch McClenaghan apparently didn't book himself because there's only a few hotels which have been set aside as quarantine hotels on arrival, and you have to book yourself a room. And Mitch McClenaghan apparently forgot fast bowlers, and he can only get home on about mid-February. So he can't get back to New Zealand until mid-Feb because there's just no room. In fact, Ramiz Raja is trying to get across to commentate, and they're just saying, if we can't get you a room in one of the quarantine hotels, you can't come. So they're not making, I mean, they're just being pretty strict on everybody. There's no, okay, we'll make a plan, we'll find you a room, or we'll squeeze you in. Rules are the rules. And, some of the guys are taking a bit of a toll on that.
It's a worry, really, because there's been a few articles that I've seen and a few people have been talking about the effect on mental health from being, stuck in a hotel room. We talked to Shane Watson last week, and he said that it hadn't even given him a key to make sure that he stayed there. Right. So it's almost like being in prison, really. It's, and you have to wonder with some of the guys playing so much cricket and travelling the whole time.
Well, I mean, Dominic Cork was just making an interesting point because he had 2 weeks when he arrived to commentate in India for the IPL. So the IPL played in Dubai, but a lot of the studio work was from India itself. So staying in a hotel, and the entire sort of studio crew had to do 14 days in India. And literally someone would arrive in PPE, knock on the door, leave all your food. So, you had the same food day in and day out for 2 weeks, where they had also on a sort of a plastic serving tray, plastic utensils. And he said it really felt, and he thought he kind of, he's quite a strong-willed individual, Dominic Cork, and he thought he had this under control. But he reckoned after day 9 and still 5 to go, he'd also been requested now to go from here to Sri Lanka because the Lankan Premier League has just been announced. And he said he's got to do a week in quarantine and he cannot face another day, let alone another week in quarantine.
That's what I mean. Now, reading up on you, you're off to Sweden to head coach of the Sweden. Is that where you're going after this is finished? Are you going up there?
Well, just firstly, I'm the only coach. I'm not just the head coach. I'm the only coach. No, I've actually just come from there. So from the IPL. So we finished our last game on the 1st, sadly, of November. And I flew across to Sweden for literally a week. And, I've got family. We're relocating on the 5th of December. They're arriving in Sweden. So frantically, registering with sort of authorities, from tax authorities, opening bank accounts, finding a house for a family of 6 of us. And our school year in South Africa finishes on the 3rd of December. So the family's flying on the 4th of December. And so tomorrow, the final's here in Karachi. And I leave directly after the final, heading for Sweden. Yes, a very new role for me. I've been following, I must say, Darren, I've been doing a lot of development and grassroots coaching over the last 2 years because I had a 2-year gap or break from the IPL. And in those 2 years, I went to places like Nepal twice, did coaching clinics there, Malawi, and just been following what's been happening in Europe, and North America is a big market. I do have an older daughter, my eldest. She's 20, and she's actually on a hockey scholarship, a field hockey in North America. And I was hoping to get across and do some coaching camps to see us, obviously a long way away from South Africa. And, been following what sort of developments in associate member countries cricket, to the extent that, when looked up where to go, European cricket, there's been a lot of on the European Cricket League. So at one stage, the only cricket taking place in the world was in Europe. So yeah, a very new venture and something I'm pretty excited about.
So your daughter gets her hockey from her dad, does she? Because did you play for South Africa hockey?
No, I never got to play. I mean, I'm often credited with playing, so I keep very quiet about that unless I'm really asked. So thanks very much for bursting that bubble, Paul. But yeah, I was actually, so long story. I mean, 92 the Cricket World Cup, we got invited even before democracy. I mean, South Africa wasn't a democracy until 94. And we got invited to that Cricket World Cup in Australia because there used to be a white and a non-white cricket board. and Ali Bacher had joined them together. I mean, he had such vision, really passionate about cricket and taking cricket to the whole country. So Nelson Mandela was being released. They were unbanning the ANC. So there was talk of South Africa finally working towards a democracy, and we were invited back. So the hockey guys thought that with the Barcelona Olympics in 1992, maybe we'll get a late invite too. And they chose a squad of about 20 odd players just in case we got a late call up. So I was in that sort of penciled in squad and nothing materialized. Obviously qualifying for Olympics is very different for a, hey, you guys, what are you doing next week? You want to come play in the World Cup? So hockey, it didn't happen. I mean, qualifying for the Olympics is like a 4-year plan. Some people a 6 or 8 year plan. So yeah, no late invites there. So never got the opportunity to play hockey for South Africa. I played state at university. I was playing state cricket and state hockey. So it's probably no surprise. It did take me 5 years to get a 3-year degree.
But it could have been. Did I read somewhere that football could have been a thing for you as well when you were a young kid?
For sure, I was dead keen on my soccer, football. As in South Africa, though, we had to play at least one sport, if not two, every term. So cricket and tennis, hockey and soccer, athletics. And as a 12 and 13-year-old, when I didn't realize that I still had to grow with the other kids, I was quite a nippy centre forward and could put the ball in the back of the net, which I suppose as a centre forward is what you're supposed to do. But then from age 13, I just didn't grow at all. And as a, I was still quick on the ground, but nothing in there. I just couldn't contest. And also had a mild form of epilepsy. I just started getting whacked on the head pretty hard, bumping my head with defenders. And my parents just said, okay, well, I was never allowed to play rugby from an early start. But then soccer, I started getting concussed way too frequently for anybody's liking. So, and at the high school I went to, 1,000 boys, there was a rugby school. And I was one of 60 kids in the whole school who played hockey. And there was definitely no soccer. So, they kind of gave us a concession. Okay, you can play hockey if you want to. But soccer just wasn't happening. So at that stage, you kind of... So football for me was something that I'd grown up... I mean, people ask me about my sporting heroes. And because of the sporting isolation in South Africa, due to apartheid, I mean, the irony of the fact was that my sporting hero was Pele.
Yeah.
So for me, he was the best centre forward in the world. Yeah, Kevin Keegan came out. He had a coaching clinic with Durban City, and we went down as a Natal Junior under-12 team, as the state junior team. We had a coaching session with the Durban City guys and Kevin Keegan. So yeah, poster on the wall. I think it was still sponsored by Stimmerol, chewing gum. I still remember it. Just a nasty chewing gum and all the frizzy hair.
Yeah.
Kevin Keegan had this mop of frizzy hair. But gee, what a player.
So I've got a question from one of our listeners who's pinged in, from Cape Town, actually, a guy called Alex Show.
Oh, dear.
And he said, ask Jonty about the moment he first came to national interest, the last ball of a domestic 50-over tournament in 1991. No chance of winning, but Richard Snell of Transvaal bowled a chest-high beamer, which Jonty smashed into the crowd and won the match of the following extra ball after kids had to be cleared of the pitch. You remember that?
I do remember that, and it's quite interesting. I mean, the chest high for most people is just a low full toss, but when it's bowled at me, I'm a bit short. I'm vertically challenged, so it does becomes a beamer by default. And 91, when somebody bowled a sort of waist high full toss, you weren't automatically given the extra run. So we needed 7 to win off the last ball. So obviously we'd lost the game because unless he bowled a wide, which he wasn't going to do. The no ball meant that I hit the ball for 6. We were still tied. So the next ball I then hit for 4. So basically one ball went for 10. But Richard Snell was somebody I'd grown up with and I'd played South African schools cricket with. He'd been a Durban boy, so I knew him really well. So he literally tiptoed into the crease because he didn't want to bowl a wide, didn't want to bowl a no ball, a foot no ball, and he just let it go. And it was a dolly hit. I mean, and at that stage I was so angry because we would come so close, but yet 7 runs short, impossible to win. So I do remember that. And it did. It was a semi-final. We beat Transvaal, who were obviously favourites at that stage. They were kind of the end of the mean machine era. So the likes of Graham Pollock had just retired, Clive Rice still playing, some great names in South African cricket. And suddenly they were knocked out by these upstarts, and especially this 19-year-old kid who looked like he was a baseball player, could field a bit, but man, he couldn't bat unless it was a chest-high beamer.
So see, 10 off the last ball. So you could have done something like that in the World Cup a few years earlier.
Oh, don't tell me. we should have one more semi-final, 99. Yeah, no, I've had too many one-run debacles. So.
Well, talking
as a fielding coach, sorry, Darren.
Yeah, talking of World Cups, I mean, 92 announced your arrival. We'll get to the other ones. And the Superman run-out of Inzamam, which put your name firm. And I would urge everyone that's listening to this to go onto YouTube and look for the greatest run-out of all time, I think it's titled, where... I mean, it was that World Cup. I mean, there were legends on your side. You were playing against legends, and on that occasion in the middle, there was Inzamam, and there was Imran Khan at the other end, and they'd gone for a quick single, and Inzi set off.
An Inzi quick single.
Well,
yeah, no, he was 19 at the time. Let's just put that in perspective. So it's in a big order.
So yeah, I mean, they call it the Superman run out because you did just get hold of the ball, run back, and then launch yourself, taking out all three stumps from what I remember as well. But then you got yourself a reputation of doing these incredible run-outs. Ricky Ponting, Alan Border, I mean, the list goes on. To me, that was the first time that we'd really seen that kind of fielding. I mean, we're so used to it now, like you said about Nicholas Poran and some of the stuff we see at the IPL. I mean, fielding is really now, I think it's even gone to a different level with the athleticism, the fitness.
100%. Yeah.
But I think you were the one that first demonstrated, you know, growing up with, at that time, with the likes of Mike Gatting and Ian Botham, not necessarily the most...
Phil Tufnell.
Yeah.
The cat. The cat.
Yeah, none of whom are known for their athleticism in the field.
What was it that...
Yes.
Did you... Was that instinctive to you, or was it something you worked on? How did you get that skill?
Darren, from a fielding... So firstly, the run-out. I mean, literally, that did launch my career. So Inzi and a photographer. And it wasn't something... I'd never practiced that. I just knew that, you know, I think it's really important, no matter what you're doing, you try and play to your strengths. And for me, I was a stopper at backward point. That was my main job. If I took catches, if I got run-outs, it was a bonus. And now, I mean, I'm one of 4 coaches in an IPL franchise. And wherever you go, whichever team you're playing in, you've got, almost a specific fielding coach, or 3 of your coaches are good enough to work on your fielding. So I had to take down a teammate, and at that stage, there weren't too many guys. Just Hansi maybe come down, and Hansi Cornier come down and hit me catches. But what I would do as a hockey, and it was just a combination of all the sports that I played, because, you know, you watch a tennis player return serve. He wants to go to his backhand or his forehand. He employs the split jump so he can move to either wing. As a forward, center forward on the soccer field and the hockey field, I knew that coming in towards the goals, the goalkeeper always came off his line to cut the angle down, because if he stood on the line, it's too easy to go either corner. Sorry, my arms are extending out of frame here. So that was the same thing. So that was my sort of ploy, was let me get in close, sometimes really close, like almost a second gully. But it just meant that I then cut the angle down, although then the ball came off the bat a lot quicker. So I didn't have much time to react, which was a good thing. It actually forced me to be ready for every single ball. So, you know, firstly, I had a lot of energy. I mean, I don't know if you noticed it as a younger, I was just running around, like, I was fetching Alan Donald's cap from fine leg and taking to the umpire. And I had a lot of energy to burn. As a hockey player, I was always coming into cricket season really fit. And it was never an issue for me to, kind of trot through 50 overs. I wanted to be in the action. And usually with the South African pace attack, we didn't have much spin at that stage. It was always kind of fourth stump, top or off stump. So backward point was the busiest zone to be in. When Pat Simcox came onto the scene, then mid-wicket was the area where the ball was going to be. And I just wanted to be where the ball was. So we as a team that went to that World Cup in 92, I mean, Kepler he had played cricket for Australia, Kepler Wessels, come back and captain South Africa. And he was the only guy on our side who had any international experience. So he just said, guys, I mean, Dave Richardson was 32, Peter Kirsten the same age, 32, Hansi, myself at 22, Andrew Hudson, 26. And no matter how young or old we were from an age point of view, none of us had any international experience. So Kepler said 2 areas we can be the best team in the world, regardless of that lack of experience. One, we can be the fittest team, which is always a worrying sign when the captain tells you that. We can be the fittest team in the world. And number two, we can be the best fielding team. So not just Jonty Rhodes as a fielder. We as a side try to focus on, our fielding. So I think most countries kind of had a few high balls, a couple of catches, and that was as much as they did with regards to fielding. I mean, we as a team worked hard as a unit, and then I would do extra stuff just because I really loved it. I loved the diving around, but I never did anything like that run-out dive before, and I never did it again afterwards. It was just the right thing at the time because, as Paul so rightly said, Inzi and fast between the wickets, you don't kind of put them in the same sentence, but when he set off, hit him on the pad, and they were going great guns at the time. Him and Imran Khan had a great partnership, about 90-odd. There'd been a massive thunderstorm, so the rate required had shot through the roof, because in those days, before Duckworth-Lewis, the team batting second, which hopefully will come to that semi-final in the same World Cup, the team batting second, just, they really had the tough end of the deal, because all you did was kind of just cut all the overs that you lost, you took them out of your innings. So suddenly Pakistan were going great guns because the outfield was still a bit wet. Bowlers were struggling to control it. So I was on the circle, because usually I'm really tight, but I was on the ring saving the boundaries. So when I hit the pad, I picked the ball up and I saw Inzi was a long way out. And I could see Imran Khan standing at the non-striker's end saying no. So it was a case of, this is the set of stumps I'm going for. And I didn't back my accuracy. We didn't practice much throwing at the stumps. We didn't have the pug nets. We didn't have, now as a fielding coach, I've got hitting bats, I've got baseball gloves, I've got nets, I've got stumps that ricochet. So, there's no excuse not to practice. But as I said, my role was to stop the ball and catch the ball. And that's what I was doing. So I backed my strength, which was my speed, against my accuracy. And as it turned out, Inzi got back a little bit quicker than I anticipated. So for me, the last 2 meters, the fastest way to get there was just to launch myself into the stumps. And, it really was an interesting shot, because it was black and white.
Yeah.
It was an overcast day. So from an exposure point of view, he didn't have a lot of light to work with, so he was just shooting in black and white anyway. But I was then suddenly announced around the world in every cricket-playing country, front page, back page, who's this kid? What is he doing? So it was interesting for me, because it launched me from total obscurity. I mean, in South Africa, people are saying, who's this Jonty Rhodes guy? He's the guy who hit that 6, the 10 off the last ball. What else does he do? Our domestic cricket, there wasn't a lot of it just prior to that World Cup in '92. So people, they were excited at the fact that South Africans were there, but Clive Rice had been left out. Jimmy Cook had been left out. All these big names in South Africa for myself and Hansie Cronje, because Kepler wanted fast, young legs in the field. The MCG was so big in those days. You had to have in fact, the late Dean Jones was about the only player that I had seen in that era throw the ball from the boundary back to the keeper without a relay throw. And I think he did it just to show that he had the arm. The rest of us were relay throwing it back to the keeper, 2 or 3 relays. So, it wasn't something that Kepler knew, that he wanted younger, faster legs in his team, batting in the middle order, the same thing, hit the ball in the gap and run like crazy. So my fitness, my fielding certainly was one of the major reasons why I got a shot at that '92 World Cup. And in that one shot, it really launched my career.
So that semi-final.
Who was the keeper at the time that obviously didn't have time to get up to the stumps?
Dave Richardson. Yeah, he's 32. He's a lawyer. He probably wasn't even thinking about it. Throw the ball. Yeah. He wasn't thinking Jonty's going to run with it.
So the semi-final, what are your recollections there?
Oh, I remember we bowled really slowly. I don't think England didn't face their full 50, because there were interesting rules in those days. Dermot Reeve at the end, Graham Hick got some good runs at the top. And, Dermot was going great guns. And I think Kepler actually got Alan Donald to slow right down, not bowl the full 50, because then we wouldn't have to, we wouldn't have the full 50 to bat. So there were some interesting rules in that time. And I think Kepler was kind of maximizing his knowledge of that. And then it got to the stage where, the game was really in the balance. And the interesting thing was that nobody had much expectation of us, because we were quite an unknown quantity. So, we hadn't had a great World Cup. We'd lost to Sri Lanka. We'd lost to New Zealand. We'd kind of beaten the teams we thought we were going to lose to, and then lost the teams we were hoping to beat. We beat the West Indies. We beat Australia, beat Pakistan, beat India. And, we were up and down throughout that whole tournament. So in the semi-final, it was probably in retrospect, I mean, Pakistan just were superb in the final, weren't they? So possibly, you never know what's going to happen in the final. But when we left that World Cup in '92, having been beaten by the rain, according to the whole of South Africa, we would have won the World Cup. So we came home champions without the trophy. So it was amazing, and we've suffered in every World Cup since.
Did it lead directly to Duckworth Lewis? Because
I think it did.
It changed.
I think it did.
Changed cricket, didn't it?
It did from there. So after that, it was Duckworth Lewis was then introduced.
Yeah.
Was Bob
even as an Englishman, right? So.
Was Bob Woolmer the coach at that time?
Bob Woolmer came on in so we had Mike Proctor, he was the first coach for South Africa.
Right.
And then Bob Woolmer joined us in '93, '94. We toured Pakistan. And we had a triangular tournament with Australia, ourselves, and Pakistan as the hosts. And we were 0 from 6. Bob Woolmer's first six games. It was a bit of a change for him. And then from a coaching point of view, and then also Kepler. Kepler was then dropped after that. Yeah. Left out, and Hansi Cronje took over the captaincy. So that was late '93, early '94.
Yeah, yeah. But you've had some. I mean, you played with some absolute legends. I think the span of your career, as you say, was the emergence of South Africa, or the return back to the international stage post-apartheid, and then by the time you sort of left off, you were firm. You were firmly set, and the players that you played with, the South African players that we saw come forward. Was a real conveyor belt of top talent, really.
Yeah, I think we were really fortunate in that our domestic sea structure was really strong. We, for a long time, only had 5 provincial teams and 6 provincial teams. So, during those years of apartheid, you would have rebel tours. We had Sri Lankan team came out, a West Indian team, Australian. And the last one that came out was Mike Gatting's side that then got stopped after they just literally got there. In fact, Pietermaritzburg, my hometown, there was a massive protest. And Gatting, I think it's the bravest thing I've ever seen. And he, he's obviously faced a lot of fast bowling in his time, but he walked through this crowd of who were, they really were peaceful protesters, but fairly intimidating. And they wanted to hand him a memorandum or petition, and he walked through them and took the petition, and actually they cancelled the tour from there. So a really brave thing to do. The fact that they were out there, it obviously caused real issues around the world. Every time South Africa, we toured New Zealand as on a rugby tour, and people were flower bombing from aeroplanes, and protesters were running on and dropping sort of nails and things on the field so the game couldn't take place. So it was an interesting time in South African cricket, but the domestic structure was really strong. So, every team almost had 6 or 7 unofficial South African players in it. And these were just the white guys, because as a non-white player, you weren't included. So it wasn't even, 1/5 of the entire cricket population. So the fact that they came out so strong, I think also, we obviously, we were a very fit team. We were quite a physical bunch of guys. So we could kind of mix and match it with most. We battled in the subcontinent. We just didn't play spin in South Africa at all. A 3-day, our first class cricket was 3 days. And to get a result in 3 days, Durban was nicknamed the Lawn for a very obvious reason, which is green.
It's true, because when we had Alan Lamb on the show, and I pointed out that he was one of the most successful English batsmen against the Great West Indian attack. And he said it was because when he was playing state cricket in South Africa, that he was kind of used to this kind of bowling, and the fact that, as you say, he was playing with the South African international players on hard wickets, pace bowling. So he was it was ingrained in him at a young age of how to play that style of attack.
Yeah, I had my first class debut was quite an interesting story, because I was the 12th man. I was 19. So kind of my first year at university, and I was almost on the fringes, but we were the bottom of the log team. So they were thinking of bringing in some fresh blood, because the old guys weren't performing that well. So they thought, okay, maybe we'll make a few changes. And as the 12th man, in the morning of the game, just before the toss, Brian Whitfield, who was a left-hand opening batter who actually had played, I think, the odd rebel game or South African game in that apartheid era, his wife had a baby. So he got a phone call, no mobile phones, obviously, in those days, and he had to rush off to hospital. We were just down to 11. They looked around the dressing room oh dear, we got to pay that guy in 11. Yeah. So, can you still carry the drink, sir, Jonty? Because I always said, again, I had lots of energy and I was buzzing around everywhere. And you talk about quality players. I mean, it's Garth LaRue, Stephen Jeffries, two Matthews brothers, Craig Matthews, Brett Matthews, Peter Kirsten, Dave Rundle was the spinner, Adrian Caper, so Western Province were top of the log. And they weren't the only team and I got 100, so on my first class debut, thanks to the baby being born that morning, and it's been 100 years since somebody in my province or my state had scored 100 on debut. So kind of took pressure off me. I didn't score another 100 that season. I got a well-played 70, again, on tough conditions where 180 was a good score for the whole team. I mean, we weren't scoring many in your innings. You didn't go past 200 a lot in the entire innings. Yeah, very, very different.
And so looking forward a bit, we got England coming down to South Africa ahead of Christmas time. You got any thoughts or predictions of how that's going to be?
Well, I'm just assuming that Cricket South Africa are going to sort themselves out first and foremost. I mean, it's been, as an ex-player, I actually worked for Standard Bank when I retired. It was one of the major sponsors of cricket in South Africa for a long time. So it was interesting to go from a train as a business banker with my commerce degree that I eventually got. And then we started the Pro 20. I mean, my one season with Gloucester in 2003, I was blown away. I mean, that was the first year that T20 was played at a league. And Bristol can only hold 5,000 people. I think they had about 5,010. I don't know where they put the other 10, but it was just jam-packed, every single game. So when we started that in South Africa, the Pro 20, we called it, Standard Bank with a sponsor. So I then took over the sponsorship account with the cricket. And it was interesting perspective because as a player, you're quite insulated and, you kind of feel that you believe the direction that everything should go pertaining to cricket. And you forget that there are other stakeholders in the game, and I think that's something that was really, for me, it was a real eye-opener because sponsors aren't just people giving money. I mean, they're giving money for a reason, not just because of the brand awareness, but because they also believe in that association and that connection and what cricket can do for their brand with their clients. So it was a really interesting perspective seeing that happen. So I've kind of been watching with interest and seeing, or not interest, more concern, what's been happening in Cricket South Africa. So, I mean, we just can't wait. We haven't had any cricket. We've just started our domestic cricket. So most of our players, coming off a 6 or 7 month layoff, a couple of guys have been in the IPL, but our domestic cricket started 2 weeks ago. So we've been playing red ball cricket, first class cricket. So there's huge anticipation. Everybody, and like you say, I mean, the schedule is so jam-packed because everybody wants to play. Obviously, from a business perspective, you need the broadcasts. You need people coming to the ground, which is not always the case in every country because of the pandemic. So every country has different scenarios. So from that point of view, we are desperate, and England are the world champions. I mean, if that doesn't sell broadcast rights or create an interest, no matter if people are or not in the stadium, then nothing ever will. So we're looking forward to it.
Are they going to sort out this mess with the administration in Cricket South Africa? You've had all these resignations.
Well,
is it an easy thing to sort out?
Well, we thought it was. We actually thought it was sorted out. I mean, there was an interim board that had been, an independent board that had been, sort of formed by the Minister of Sport. And obviously with the ICC, and we've seen what's happened with Zimbabwe in the recent past, as soon as there's government intervention, that's a part of the ICC's constitution, they kind of pull the status of the member country. So if South African sports, if the ministry gets involved, which they have in a way, but they've been in contact with the ICC, so they kind of feel like they're doing things without just saying, we're taking away, the game of cricket from the real stakeholders. And Cricket South Africa, the sort of member councils, who are the 14 presidents of all the provinces, they have now gone and said, hang on, we're not going to accept this interim board. Because the interim board of very, you sort of got legal backgrounds, commercial backgrounds, so very specific with regards to governance. And because there have been governance issues in Cricket South Africa for the last 3 years or 4 years. So the fact that they've had a very sort of governance focused, and with obviously cricket expertise as well, focused board, interim board that's advising and helping Cricket South Africa get its stuff together. It's a real concern that this is now they've turned around to say, the members' council, saying, well, no, we don't actually, it's not in our constitution. We can't be forced to take on this board because you can't tell us to do that. Because legally, so they kind of, I'm going to say they're not doing a Donald Trump, but they're using every legal means to not take the interim board. And that's going to really irritate the sports minister because he's been fairly patient up until now.
I think we're going to have to, we're running out of time. I've just noticed on the clock, and I know it's late over there. Enjoy the PSL final tomorrow. Karachi versus Lahore. The Kings versus the Calendars. Should be a good game from what we've seen so far, but we really appreciate you taking time out to speak to us, Jonty. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll catch up with you again, and hopefully next time we talk to you, you'll be in Gothenburg and you'll be settled. And
Barry, I'm Stockholm. I'm on the other coast.
Stockholm,
yeah.
Of course. But many thanks from both Paul and myself for taking time.
Darren. Sure, Paul.
And we'll catch up with you soon.
Guys, thank you. Great to spend time with you.
All the very best. Best of luck.
Thanks, Paul. Cheers, Darren.